I found a weak dragon and gave its razor-sharp claws a manicure. The dragon woke up and stared in disbelief at its claws now adorned with black cat-eye polish. Then it looked up at me, who was guiltily preparing to run away, so it decisively carried me back to its cave in its mouth. During the day, I cultivate, then numbly polish the dragon's scales. At night, the dragon coils around me, eagerly inhaling my scent, its face filled with rapture, whenever I try to leave. The dragon shifts back into human form, its coldly beautiful face tinged with grievance as it hooks me with its tail, choking out, "Little one, don't go. I don't want to become a wild dragon no one wants." I almost forgot, this dragon has separation anxiety. I was eagerly carried back to its cave by a dragon. Before I could even react, in the blink of an eye, I found myself at a dragon's nest thousands of miles away. I was dumbfounded. The dragon raised its tail in front of me and gently poked me with a claw. I took a step back from the poke. It froze for a moment, seemingly surprised by its own strength after reverting to its original size, then awkwardly retracted its claw. This dragon was full of curiosity about humans, good-natured, and very affectionate. When I first met it, I diagnosed this dragon with a mental illness, heart disease. I can't figure it out myself, to be honest. I rarely encounter such a gentle-tempered dragon. Especially a giant black one notorious for its ferocity and aloofness. I thought it was going to die, so I figured I shouldn't let its scales go to waste and coaxed the dragon to follow me, but ever since I gave it a manicure, its dull eyes suddenly lit up. The way it looked at me was as if I were some rare treasure. Its illness was cured. After a brief moment of thought, I identified the cause. This dragon was distressed because its claws weren't shiny enough. Considering the dragon's fondness for all things glittery, it must have grown depressed over the lack of luster on its claw surfaces, and then, without any warning, the dragon abducted me to its lair. "I want to keep you, human." I sternly refused this absurd proposal. The dragon chose selective deafness. It playfully nipped at my sleeve, half pushing and half dragging me toward the entrance of a cave, proudly lifting its head. It pushed the treasures it had accumulated over half a lifetime toward me with its tail. Look, the refusal on the tip of my tongue took an abrupt turn. "All right, I'm yours to keep now." I agreed to this improper relationship of being raised by a dragon. Joke, even a second's delay would be disrespectful to money. You should know, this is a top-grade spirit crystal. Just a tiny piece costs hundreds of thousands of spirit stones. The spiritual energy contained within is countless times denser than what naturally scatters in the wild. This dragon has a whole pile. The key is, as long as I nod, all of these could be mine. One must learn to seize opportunities. Once missed, they're gone. The dragon picked a red heart-shaped one for me, somewhat shyly. "Here, for you." I hesitated for a moment but ultimately took it. It's a bit eerie, but for the sake of so many spirit crystals, I'll try to adapt as soon as possible. The dragon really seems to be raising me seriously. I can freely take any of the treasures it has collected in its lair, just tell it what I want to eat each day, and when it sees me practicing cultivation, it even actively guides me from the side. There's just one small drawback. It forces me to play on it every day. It contorts its body into undulating curves, making it easier for me to climb up and slide down. How strange. But when I meet its expectant gaze and see the small pile of spirit crystals I've used beside me, I feel a bit guilty. I'd better just do it. 2 days later, I couldn't stand the way it kept looking at me with such doting indulgence. I couldn't help but slap it across the face. "Can you act normal? You're raising a human, not a pet." Even if I close my eyes and meditate beside him, I can't ignore that intensely burning gaze. So annoying. The dragon suddenly bared its teeth in a grin and leaned its head close to me. "Hit me again, harder, hit me again," it emphasized particularly, with a tone of faint anticipation. For a moment, I seemed to understand something. After a slight hesitation, I gave it a light pat on the face, gentle as a caress. The dragon was displeased, its tail drooping unhappily on the ground. I widened my eyes, looking at it in disbelief. So all these days, the dragon had been acting coy and constantly forcing me to play with its body. Refusal wasn't an option, just to annoy me so I'd give it a slap. The next second, I abruptly withdrew my hand. I found this weak dragon while on a mission. At the time, I was rushing down the mountain, planning to complete the task and then represent the beast-taming sect at the once every 50 years competition hosted by the sword sect. Just making up the numbers. The plan was disrupted because of the appearance of this dragon. An examination revealed no external injuries on the dragon, yet it still lay listless with half-closed eyes. This state seemed more like a loss of will. The dragon had no desire to live. I gave it a kick, and it lazily lifted its eyelids to glance at me, thinking it had fallen on the road and was blocking the way. It silently shuffled to the side and closed its eyes again. "Are you trying to die?" the dragon replied listlessly. "Pretty much, a little dead, about 40%, it remained motionless. Since becoming a disciple of the beast-taming sect, I've majored in veterinary medicine while minoring in manicuristry, specializing in grooming and cleaning for beasts. Seeing an animal listless and lacking energy before me, professional habit made me instinctively place my hand on the dragon's head. I've determined that this dragon before me is in excellent physical health. Though it seems to have some emotional distress, the dragon has a troubled heart." After hesitating for a moment, I made a rather presumptuous request. Well, before you die, could you stay with me for a while? Your scales are quite beautiful, don't waste them like this. I'd like to take a few of your scales after you die." That was a lie. What I really wanted was all the scales on its body. The dragon made a sound, seemingly pondering the feasibility of this proposal. As a result, the dragon actually shrank itself to the size of 2 fingers, making it easier for me to carry. "You have good taste, but my scales don't look good anymore," the dragon grumbled. I rolled the dragon up and wrapped it around my wrist. Its tail hung limply, tickling me a bit, so I ended up braiding the tail tendrils into a little plate. "Don't worry, before you die, I'll polish your scales to a glossy shine so you can go out with some dignity." Before long, the rough, dry scales rubbed my wrist red, probably because the skin was broken. A trace of blood seeped out. I picked up the dragon and sighed softly. "How long has it been since you took care of these scales? They're so rough. Dragons are usually so clean, but this one is really not hygienic at all." This black dragon, unlike others of its kind known for their irritable and aloof nature, could even be described as gentle. I had barely uttered this single sentence, hardly a reprimand, when the dragon completely broke down, its tail tightly covering its head, coiled into a ball. It sobbed uncontrollably, gasping for breath. "Wah! No one helps me groom my scales. Every dragon in the clan has their own little human caretaker. I'm just a worthless stray dragon." Crying and crying, the dragon lost control of its emotions and passed out from sobbing. I've never seen a dragon so aggrieved that it actually cried itself unconscious. The dragon's dry, cracked scales were simply too unbearable for me to endure. As a disciple of the beast-taming sect, I can't stand to see filthy creatures. Of course, dragons are no exception, with my occupational habits kicking in. I took out grooming tools from my mustard seed bag, found a spot near water, and gave the dragon a full-body makeover. 1 hour later, the dragon woke up, shrieking as it frantically covered its non-existent private parts with all 4 claws. "What did you do to me?" I rubbed my slightly sore wrist and replied calmly. "What do you think? Isn't it obvious? I gave it a thorough cleaning and full-body grooming, and I hadn't even put away the tools yet." The words had barely left his lips. The dragon looked utterly humiliated and furious, its scales bristling all over. "You touched my entire body and saw everything." The dragon's voice cracked from shouting, acting exactly like someone who'd been harassed by a ruffian. I remained silent, and directly reached out to pinch the dragon's mouth shut. "If you can't speak properly, then don't speak at all. What do you mean by, you touched my whole body and saw everything? I was just cleaning you." Countless animals deliberately collapse on the path down from the beast-taming sect every day, and the disciples there pick up creatures daily. "Did you faint on the road not for us to clean you for free, but to take the opportunity to pin the blame on someone?" I retorted. "The beast-taming sect offers free grooming and cleaning for any animals they pick up, a service that's already well known among the creatures." "I don't believe it knows nothing at all." The black dragon's eyes darted around, avoiding my gaze, before it finally shut them and stubbornly declared, "So what? I'm sticking with you whether you like it or not." I was both amused and angered by its sheer audacity. All right, I actually got scammed by a dragon, trying to take advantage of me. Dream on." I turned around and bolted. Didn't manage to escape. got swept back by the dragon's tail again. In a fit of anger, I struggled with all my might. Result, didn't budge an inch. I fell silent. Ever since a piece of my spine was pulled out, even my most basic struggles seem laughable. Now, all I can do is vent my emotions through meaningless actions, so I took out my tools, bent my head down, and gave the dragon's claws, the ones that imprisoned me, a manicure. The dragon tilted its head, its brain short-circuiting for a good while, unable to comprehend my behavior. A moment later, the dragon widened its eyes in disbelief, looking down at its paw now adorned with black cat-eye markings. Then raised its head to glare at me, my guilty expression already preparing to flee. Without hesitation, it carried me back to its cave in its jaws. Just like that, the dragon's emotional wound was healed. It poked me with its claw, spun around in delight, and proposed the idea of keeping me as its pet. I agreed, because there's a bunch of crystal spirits here. I've been stuck at the golden core stage for a long time. Perhaps I can seize this opportunity to break through a level before the sword sect's competition begins. Gaining even a slight advantage to crush my enemies would be worth it, but after just 2 short days of interaction, I've had enough of this dragon's neuroticism. Damn it, during the day, I have to scrub the dragon's scales, and at night, I have to endure its creepy, obsessive sniffing. If I ignore it for even half a quarter hour, it starts wailing, "Why aren't you paying attention to me? Pay attention to me." I planned to run away from home tonight. I said I'd run away tonight, but I overslept. The dragon brought me a dazzling set of mermaid silk and told me to change into it. It said it wanted to introduce me to its little friends. The guilty dragon pushed a pile of treasures toward me with its tail, including priceless elixirs. It lifted its head and instructed me, "If anyone asks whose family you belong to later, just say you're Spencer's, got it?" His tone carried a hint of both anticipation and worry. I gave a soft in response, then turned to change my clothes. This black dragon was named Spencer, and after transforming into human form, not only did he possess strikingly handsome features, but his physique was also exceptional. Broad shoulders, a narrow waist, and long, powerful legs. When I came out again, he approached me affectionately, just like in his dragon form, wanting to nuzzle against me. I was so startled that I turned pale and immediately shouted, "Stop!" Spencer's puckered lips froze mid-air as he looked at me in confusion. What's wrong? I did clean my mouth properly, he added with a pout. The dragon seemed confused as to why the person who had allowed cheek rubs just last night suddenly wouldn't let him get close today. I cleared my throat awkwardly and turned my face away. Human form is not allowed. How bizarre. The prerequisite for letting it happily nuzzle against me was that I never considered it human. I'm a rather conservative person. Spencer gave me a resentful look but ultimately restrained himself. Fine. The little dragon gathering had a great atmosphere, and every dragon was very friendly. Spencer took me around to greet each dragon. "Hey, how did you know I got myself a wife? See this? My scales were washed by my wife. The mark on my face was left by my wife. She loves me so much." Every dragon who sees me looks utterly astonished, turning their heads to stare at Spencer in disbelief. They chatter away in Draconic, leaving me completely clueless. If I could understand Draconic, I'd know exactly why Spencer is so proud, because he got married at a very young age. Just after coming of age, he was the fastest among his peers in the clan to find a mate, but unfortunately, I joined the beast taming sect halfway through and haven't learned beast language yet. After the conversation, the dragon's elders gave me a red envelope and looked at me with affectionate eyes. Reason tells me not to take it, but my hand uncontrollably accepts it. I feel something is off. After barely enduring until the end, when we returned to the dragon's lair, I asked Spencer why the slightly older dragons were giving me things. He hummed, tilted his head, and explained, "They say it's a dragon tradition. Every dragon gives this when they find a mate." The words had barely left his lips, the box in my hand fell to the ground with a clatter. I asked again in disbelief. Spencer looked puzzled. "It's a gift from the elders." I widened my eyes. "Aren't I the one you're raising? How did I become your wife?" I realized the seriousness of the situation. Spencer suddenly stopped in his tracks, and we stared at each other, both seeing shock in each other's eyes. I was shocked to find out I had unknowingly become a dragon's mate. Spencer was shocked. Thinking I knew, accepting a dragon's offer to be raised by them meant agreeing to become their spouse. I quickly returned all the items to him. I'm truly sorry. I genuinely didn't know that accepting a dragon's invitation to be raised was equivalent to agreeing to become their partner. Spencer stood there awkwardly holding the items, looking utterly heartbroken. But aren't you a disciple of the beast-taming sect? How could you not know the courtship rituals of dragons? If you leave, what will I do? After holding it in for a long while, I finally blurted out, I haven't read much. I genuinely don't know. I've only been in the beast-taming sect for 20 years, practicing the most basic veterinary skills, and my visits to the library can be counted on one hand. Before this, I was a sword cultivator. Every day, the moment I opened my eyes, I was out on missions to earn money, just to buy new scabbards for my precious sword. Where would I find extra time to learn about other things? I thought raising a dragon was a niche hobby, perhaps just to satisfy some peculiar fetish. He provided the money, and I let him raise me for a while. Ours was purely a transactional relationship. Who knew the truth would be like this? Spencer held back his tears and said with a choked voice, since it's a misunderstanding, you can go. I hesitated for a moment, then turned and ran, before I could reach the exit. 2 words were thrown at me from behind, striking like thunder out of a clear sky. I told you to leave. Why are you running? You must be reluctant to part with me. He's talking nonsense again. Dead legs, run faster. But the next second, my waist tightened as the dragon's tail dragged me back with irresistible force. I knew it. I gave up struggling. I let Spencer hold me, burying his head in the crook of my neck. Woo-woo, you're not allowed to leave. Don't go. I don't want to become a stray dragon that no one wants. The dragon is howling so loudly. In the end, I still didn't leave. After agreeing to the dragon, I tacitly allowed its behavior of wrapping around me and obsessively sniffing me like a creep. Spencer naturally figured out the state of my body. The bones along the spine were riddled with cracks, and the forcibly reconstructed meridians were at constant risk of collapse. Without showing any sign, he leaned in to absorb the essence while silently using his dragon's breath to gradually nourish and repair them. When I woke the next morning, my entire body felt refreshed. I knew then that this dragon must have done something to me, until I examined my body and discovered that the previously fragile meridians and shattered spine were slowly healing. I almost cried. 100 years. I exhausted every means to find a way to repair them. Yet it couldn't compare to a few nights of nourishment from dragon's breath. If I had known this could solve it, what was the point of all the detours I took before? Spencer laid out his terms. The dragon can help you retrieve your extracted spine and also provide spiritual energy and elixirs to consolidate your cultivation. But I have only one request. I wish to stay by your side as your partner. Though I knew he had ulterior motives, I shamefully found myself tempted, because I am truly, utterly exhausted. From being a once-in-a-generation sword cultivator to hitting rock bottom, my cultivation was destroyed. My life-bound sword, forged from my spine, was forcibly severed and extracted, and now, after restructuring my meridians to become a mere disciple of the beast-taming sect, it has taken me a full century. I'm lucky to be alive, let alone anything else. I spent 4 days and 3 nights extracting quite a bit of dragon's breath from Spencer. At first, Spencer could still restrain himself from losing control and indulging in feeding, but after experiencing the benefits of being nourished by dragon's breath, I practically forced his head down with eager eyes. You must suck hard. Spencer lowered his gaze and silently swallowed. After burying himself in the task for a while, he looked up with moist, dazed eyes. He said, there's another way to quickly heal the cracks in your bones. I was initially displeased that he stopped moving, causing the supply of dragon's breath to be insufficient. Hearing this, his eyes lit up slightly. Tell me. His throat moved, his dragon tail hooking around my ankle, rubbing it intermittently, his gaze burning as he stared at my lips, hoarsely saying, dragon saliva. The abacus is practically hitting me in the face, so I took a deep breath, cupped his face in my hands, and planted a kiss on the corner of his lips. Then let's do it. The aim was a bit off, but the result was good. The intense dragon's breath suddenly filled me to the brim, nearly overwhelming me. I quickly began to guide it bit by bit, mending the cracks in my spine. Even when I was desperately tired in the middle, I didn't dare loosen my grip with my eyes closed, fearing the dragon's breath might stop. I clutched Spencer's hair and felt the warm, textured dragon horns. A bit curious, I gave it a touch. He let out a soft hum. his dragon tail deftly wrapping around my hands and pressing them against his waist. Preventing any movement. Don't touch the horns. I didn't really want to touch them that much anyway. It was just an accidental brush. I fell silent, obediently staying completely still. Spencer lowered his gaze, then suddenly parted his lips and bit me. The sharp pain at the corner of my mouth made me gasp. Ouch! Why did you bite me? Just as I was about to push him away, his dragon tail coiled around me from behind, pressing down like a rope, forcing me to stay pressed against him. Don't touch the horns now, but other places are fine. So, the tail tip deliberately curled around to tickle my palm. Is that what it meant? Alright, I misunderstood. I thought it was showing off how impressive it was. His face was full of anticipation. I paused for a moment before speaking. You'd better behave, Spencer. Even a rock in a latrine isn't as stubborn as I am. Then they simply pressed their lips together, maintaining this for 4 days and 3 nights. The results were quite moving. The nourished meridians grew robust, and the spine, once riddled with cracks, finally showed signs of healing. With the nourishment of heavenly treasures and dragon's breath, I successfully formed my golden core. This is my second attempt at forming the golden core. The first time was 100 years ago, when I was still Kathy, the senior sister of the sword sect. The moment I opened my eyes, I pushed away the man who was pressing his lips against mine. I need to get out. Spencer was unwilling, hesitantly inching closer again. Isn't staying here nice? Nice my ass. The bastard who stripped my bones and stole my sword a century ago is still alive and kicking. How am I supposed to kill him if I don't get out? I slapped his face to the side, expressionless. Say it again. I want to go out. Spencer, sporting a bright red slap mark, obediently complied this time. Okay then. I glanced at him indifferently. Huh, man, I knew it. He definitely loves this kind of thing. Spencer trembled slightly with excitement because of my disdainful look. Perfect. It's the look you'd give a dog. He's saved. After going out, I rushed straight to the employer's house where I had previously taken the task. I gave her beloved pet pig a full-body massage SPA. Since I arrived later than the agreed time, I was supposed to have a spirit stone deducted. But the employer was a beautiful, kind-hearted, and wealthy princess who didn't mind the delay and paid the full amount. Just a bit blind, I wore a veil, staring straight at the man holding the princess's hand. I knew this man all too well. He was the bastard I'd been cursing. The dragon coiled around my wrist flicked its tail against my palm. I snapped back to reality, averted my gaze, and followed the guide out without showing any emotion. My mood wasn't particularly good. So I simply went to a small tea house to drink tea and listen to storytelling. As it turned out, the storyteller was recounting the tale of Frank, a mortal from the mundane world who dared to challenge the sword sect. The story told of how he questioned the sword sect's senior sister about the reason for breaking off their engagement, how love turned to hatred, and how, despite being a mere mortal, he single-handedly challenged the senior sister of the sword sect, sealing his legend with a single strike. Finally, in front of everyone, the legendary tale was revealed, exposing the hypocritical and heartless true nature of the sword sect's senior sister, Kathy. Hearing this made me so furious that I crushed 3 teacups in my grip. What a load of nonsense, utter rubbish. Before I joined the sword sect, I did indeed have a childhood engagement with Frank, who was my neighbor at the time, but that was just playful banter between elders, with no written proof. After learning that I had gained the opportunity to go into cultivation, my parents, not wanting to delay either family, even specially sent gifts over. That verbal childhood betrothal doesn't count. The 2 families sat down and had a proper discussion. Frank was also present at the time, and he agreed, since Kathy wishes to pursue immortality, as a mere mortal, I shouldn't hinder her path to enlightenment. I possessed exceptional talent in sword cultivation, and within just a few decades, I had already made a name for myself, becoming what others called a prodigy swordsman. However, during a sword sect competition, Frank suddenly appeared. I was still puzzled as to why he had remained in his 20s for the past several years. He pointed at me and said, "Kathy, you abandoned your mortal marriage vows for the sake of cultivation, and even attempted to wipe out my entire family multiple times. Do you think cultivators can treat mortal lives as mere weeds? Multiple attempts, please. I'm a sword cultivator. Even if I need to eliminate a cultivator without a sound, I have plenty of means and strength to do so. He's just a mortal." mere mortal, standing on the stage. I was about to cast a silencing spell on his mouth, which kept spouting nonsense, and explain the whole story clearly. Suddenly, an overwhelming force restrained me, rendering me unable to speak or move freely. The voices condemning me for being two-faced and unworthy of my position grew louder from below the stage. Frank seemed to have made a resolute decision. He casually drew a sword from a nearby swordsman, climbed onto the platform, and pointed the blade directly at me. "Pick up your sword and fight me. If I win, you must renounce your cultivation. If I lose, remember not to bully the young and poor. I'll challenge you again next time." A swordsman, who typically treats his sword as more precious than life itself, just casually let him draw it, and just like that, the cultivators from all corners of the land were so easily stirred up. My reputation and authority as the senior sister of the sword sect are actually inferior to some unknown nobody who might not even be human, yet in the next moment, I found myself uncontrollably raising my sword and charging straight forward. The power was overwhelmingly strong. Not only did it control me, but everyone around seemed to turn into mindless puppets in an instant. Even the elders on the platform were no exception. I couldn't resist. Like a walking corpse, Frank on the stage gouged out my spine, severing the connection of the life-bound sword I had forged from it. In an instant, they were cheering for Frank on the stage. My life-bound sword was forged from my spine, a secret I had told no one but my late master. The sword sect's leader took Frank as his disciple, and everyone abandoned me. I thought I was going to die here, but then a pair of black boots appeared before me. My junior brother looked down at me coldly and tossed me a recovery pill. "Someone like you should have died without dignity, but for some reason, my heart aches terribly." He clutched his chest, a fleeting struggle flashing in his eyes. Finally, he closed his eyes as if I were a ferocious beast, and hurried away, with trembling hands. I picked up the pill and forced it into my mouth, blood and all. The soul-returning pill, a medicine so potent it could revive a person with a single breath, priceless beyond measure. This elixir was still the reward our master gave to our junior brother for passing the secret realm trial when he was alive. Only two remain in the world. Junior brother, it's not in vain that I've always cherished you. There's still hope for salvation. I closed my eyes, suppressing the shock in my heart. This person's origins are unclear. He is definitely not Frank. The eerie and domineering power emanating from him could influence the minds of everyone. From then on, the name of the sword sect's senior disciple, Kathy, gradually faded from memory. In her place rose the newly prominent mortal, Frank. After leaving the tea house, I returned to the inn. Spencer transformed into human form and silently bandaged my hand, which had been cut by the shards of a teacup I had crushed in a fit of brute strength. He lowered his eyes and said, "Your heart is restless." I glared at him, my tone sharp. "Nonsense. If you saw your enemy living better than you, wouldn't you hate them too?" Spencer fell silent. Suddenly, something was pressed into my hand. It was the dragon's tail. The tip of the tail curled deftly around a deep red crystal, placing it flatteringly into my palm. He paused for a moment, then nuzzled my hand in a coaxing manner. He pursed his lips lightly, turning his face away without looking at me, his voice tinged with grievance. "Don't be upset. I'll give you crystal spirits, and you can also squeeze my tail. I didn't mean to criticize you. Just don't crush the teacup with brute force. It might hurt your hand. If you're in a bad mood, you can vent by squeezing my tail. It won't cut your hand." The dragon's sincere and straightforward kindness startled me, making my heart skip a beat. Instinctively, I rubbed the fine scales at the tip of his tail. His behavior of offering his tail for me to squeeze piqued my curiosity. I stroked it doubtfully and couldn't help but ask, "What does stroking a tail signify among dragons?" The texture felt a bit strange, dry, with firm yet slightly soft and powerful flesh beneath the hard scales. When I stroked firmly along the scales, his entire body would tremble. The black dragon is quite similar to how you'd comfort a giant canine. It needs to be thoroughly roughed up to feel comfortable and satisfied. Spencer bit his lower lip, his eyes moist. Suppressing his trembling, he said in a shaky voice, "It doesn't have any special meaning, just a way to show goodwill and comfort." I raised an eyebrow and glanced at him. This look is far from innocent. His hand once again stroked heavily along the direction of the scales. The next second, he collapsed dazedly right onto me. "Did your mood get a little better?" he asked with a resentful gaze, his voice trembling. A dragon's tail is a sign of submission, something only used for comfort in bed. I withdrew my hand guiltily and said sheepishly, much better now. That night, Spencer went out in the middle of the night while I was sound asleep and didn't return until dawn, carrying the chill and dew of the night. A certain sneaky dragon crept onto the bed, curling itself into a ball in an attempt to pretend it had never left, but the faint scent of blood gave it away. I opened my eyes, reached out to pull the dragon over, and hugged it close to me, tucking the blanket around us. Failed, didn't you? I closed my eyes again, my tone unsurprised. The dragon pressed tightly against my chest, resting its head on my neck, and responded gloomily, yeah. I gently tapped its back with my fingertips and softly comforted it. It's all right. For your first attempt, you managed to retreat relatively unscathed. That's much better than my first few tries at killing him. Back then, I even lost a leg. He is indeed hard to kill, but this time, he will undoubtedly die. The sword sex competition matches opponents through a random draw, with one match determining victory, and the winner advances. Without a doubt, I was paired against Frank again. This time, I noticed something different about him. Lines of floating text. A loser rises to become the sword sex genius. This is what real men should watch. Just one more beauty and I'll have a harem of 3,000. Frank frowned and told me to get down. I don't hit women. You still have time to admit defeat now. Isn't this a disguised insult in its own way? On the arena, drawing one's sword and fighting with all one's strength is the true respect for an opponent. I smiled, removed my veil, and clasped my fists in salute. Kathy, disciple of the beast-taming sect, seeks your guidance. Frank narrowed his eyes slightly, recognizing me, his tone icy. It's you. He abruptly drew his sword and charged, a golden core against a nascent soul, 2 major realms apart. I was destined to lose, but since I could still reconstruct my meridians and cultivate after having my bones extracted, I naturally had some unconventional tricks up my sleeve. Barely dodging the attack, I quickly formed hand seals and shouted. First original technique, the roach's temptation. Thousands of cockroaches rained down from the sky, leaving everyone stunned. The beast-taming sect was supposed to tame beasts, but I've only been a disciple for 20 years. This is really asking too much of me. After much effort, I learned to control insects. Insects count as animals too, right? After all, they're alive. A swarm of cockroaches spread rapidly outward from the center of the arena, covering the ground like a tide. And I diligently follow the rules, for nothing can defy the natural course of development. As long as I don't blatantly attempt to take his life, that force cannot harm me. I command the robust cockroaches to bite Frank's head. Ambushed in a vulnerable spot, he scrambles away in humiliation, cursing loudly. Look, I told you my previous method was wrong. This weakening action takes immediate effect. I grabbed a handful of sexy female cockroaches and, seizing the moment when he opened his mouth to curse, desperately stuffed them in. Cockroaches aren't very harmful. This act won't pose any real threat to his life, so within reasonable limits, I'm fine. This considerate act of feeding someone caught everyone off guard. They instinctively covered their mouths and took a collective step back in unison. Only Spencer threw several handkerchiefs onto the stage from below, looking like a worried little husband fretting over his wife not returning home. He anxiously shouted, "Wipe your hands, don't forget to wipe your hands." I turned back and gave him a grateful smile. Woo-woo, Spencer understands me. I'm going to kill you. Frank's eyes were wide with fury. His terrifying expression scared me so much that I frantically summoned a protective shield while running away. Woodlouse screams, centipedes kiss, toads scramble, motherless millipede. Every time I summon the little cuties, I never forget to toss a few over to Frank, yet. Even though I didn't throw any at the people below the stage, the way they looked at me was full of terror. His mouth, which had been wide open, snapped shut after I remotely aimed and threw a woodlouse at him. His face turned red with anger as he came at me with a knife. A person who has lost their rationality is truly terrifying. His eyes were bloodshot as he charged at me to kill. But he failed to notice the hundreds of corpses beneath his feet, so he slipped and, by sheer coincidence, fell right onto the plain. Upward-facing blade I hastily thrust forward, piercing his heart in one strike. I forcefully pried open his hand and took back the gleaming white sword. Did you even know how to use my sword properly? I kindly pulled the knife out for him. Frank clutched his wound, lost his balance, and collapsed straight onto me. As it happened, I hadn't yet put the knife away after pulling it out, and so it pierced right through his right chest. That eliminated any possibility of him surviving due to having unusually positioned organs. He was the one who slipped. I just happened to have a blade standing there. He ran into the blade himself. Can't say I killed him on purpose. Moments later, a tiny glowing orb emerged from his body and tried to flee, but the sky above suddenly darkened with thick clouds. And a bolt of lightning as wide as a bucket struck down, hitting the orb with full force. Even Frank beside him was exclusively struck by 81 bolts of lightning. In the end, not even ashes remained. This shows how furious the deceived heavenly truth of this world was. Everyone regained their senses. The scene before them was a complete mess, and everyone recalled the absurd things they had done while under control. Some covered their faces and wept, while others panicked and turned to search for the treasures they had lost. I slowly stepped down from the stage. I couldn't put into words what I was feeling inside. This bizarre yet tranquil incident stemmed from a delusional man from another world, foolishly dreaming of dominating the cultivation realm while indulging in his harem fantasies, merely aided by that very power, like a healed wound concealing shards of glass within the flesh. It throbbed with pain from time to time. Yet I should never have had to endure the agony of bone gouging. Even if the bones were melted back into my body, I could no longer resonate with the sword as I once did. I smiled bitterly. A fleeting peak, even if just for a moment, still counts as having experienced it. Barely enough to say there are no regrets. My vision grew blurry before me. I looked up, opening my palm to hand a red crystal to Spencer. Give me a hug. I'm really so very tired. What responded to me was a warm, broad embrace. Spencer used his fingertips to wipe away my tears, gently patting my back. I buried my head in the soft chest, instinctively nuzzling against it before asking an untimely question. Considering how exhausted I am, could I have some dragon's breath? This stuff is really good, great for cultivation. Gotta grab some while I can. Spencer pressed his lips together, giving an almost imperceptible nod and a quiet, "Emichum." Then he leaned in close to my ear and whispered, "Every inch of this dragon is yours. You can nibble wherever you want." My ears burned crimson. What nonsense is he spouting? I wanted a taste of dragon's breath, not to suckle. The breath by my ear was faint yet scorching hot. Perhaps because we were too close, I could clearly feel the beating of his heart in his chest. "Spencer, your heartbeat is so erratic." I couldn't help but point out. "Spencer, that's yours." "Me, oh. My heart is in turmoil." Extra story. I've returned to my old profession. Still a veterinarian in the beast-taming sect. Unlike my previous obscurity, because of Frank's incident, I'd become famous. Every day, different cultivators come to see me under the pretense of grooming their beloved pets. It's like watching monkeys. So annoying. I hid myself away. The only ones suffering were the entire beast-taming sect, spending all day grooming the little animals they brought in. Their hands nearly cramping from exhaustion, they called for me to return. But I shook my head and sent a message saying to at least wait until the heat dies down. When people aren't crowding the entrance anymore, then I'll go back. Sect disciple. But the Grand Elder has already started collecting fees. A regular meeting costs 30 spirit stones. Front row seats are 300, and the best spot is 30,000 spirit stones. Darling, I want to raise you. In the end, I mustered up the courage to return to the sect. Of course, I rode back on a dragon. It really made me the center of attention, drawing many envious glances. The only downside was the discomfort. It chafed my inner thighs painfully. After we returned, Spencer used dragon saliva to heal my wounds. Once he finished licking, he quietly hugged his damp tail tip, awkwardly immersing himself in the cold pool with only his head above water, giving me a rather resentful look. I let out a light sigh and followed him straight into the cold pool. People often say one thing but mean another. When they say no, they really mean yes. Do you understand what I mean? Then I touched the scalding tail, stroking it lightly, enduring the strange sensation brought by the scales. The dragon understood. I cried, extra. The drunken dragon was clingy and vain. He pulled out a pile of colorful crystal spirits, compared them to his own tail, and asked me to choose. Would it look good if we inlaid a red diamond crystal spirit? I chimed in from the side. It would look nice, as long as you like it. Spencer became unhappy, his tail drooping. You're just humoring me. not even giving your opinion. Humph, if you won't say it, then I'll hang a little white bell and jingle it for you every day, and also, I quickly covered his mouth to prevent him from saying anything even more outrageous. He broke free from my hand and leaned in to whisper in my ear, "Don't you like it?" With my ears burning red, I replied in flustered annoyance. "Shut up," he obediently responded. Oh, after hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.